So the first thing we do when we catch a swarm is to put a sheet under them. And you do that because if the queen falls, you want to be able to find her.
Oh, okay.
Or if any of the bees fall, it's easier to get them if they're on a sheet than if they're on the ground where you can't really see them. This is a lot of branches on this bush. That's about the best I can do. I can shake them from that straight into this box. Okay, so I have some frames of old comb in here, which they like the smell of.
Okay.
So I'm going to see if they will just come onto the old comb. I hate to shake them if I don't have to, because it's kind of violent.
Are there different kinds of bees? Some look small and some look big.
Well, these are all honeybees. There are, yes, 4,000 kinds of bees.
So within a hive,
And within the hive, this hive, they're all honeybees, right? So I'm going to take this piece of old comb and see if I can convince them to just walk onto it. They're not particularly interested in walking under the old comb.
just cling together, huh?
Yeah, they're holding on to each other while they're trying to decide where to go. Okay, some of them are going onto the comb. Come on, girls. This is a pretty nice clump of bees now that I'm in the bush with them. I'm going to leave this sitting down here with the old comb in it for a minute before I shake them. They'll just fall, yeah. But I want these people to be able to see how big they are. So let me see if y'all can see. There you go. Best I can do. So I'm going to get the hive box directly under this swarm as best I can, and then I'm going to get them to go into the box. 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to wait a minute and see. We'll be able to tell if we have the queen or not, because if we don't, they'll go back up. Now what I'm going to do is not cover the box, but I'm going to partially cover the box. Now look what they're doing. This is really interesting, but what they're doing is they're pointing toward the inside, which means the queen is down in there.
Okay.
So that is how they know. Let me see if this is getting. But that's how we know the queen is in there, is because the bees are pointing in that direction. So you can see these bees, they're going that way. The reason they're going that way is because the queen is inside and they all want to be with their mother. They're following her scent. Instead of being all over the bottom of the box, they're all over the old comb. Cool, huh? Now let's see what's left on the branches. Usually not much, but there'll be a few bees. One more little shank. But see, these girls are sure their mama's here, and they kind of like it because I've got this old comb in here. So now we're going to get closer to closing the box, but we're going to wait a while because they need some time to determine that they are that this is where they belong. This many of them flying around out here, I want them to calm down and get into the box. But what happens at this time of year is that the beehive has an evolutionary drive to split in half and reproduce just like humans reproduce children. And so instead, the queen lays eggs all the time and has bees all the time, so you have individual reproduction. But in the spring, the drive for the hive is to have a hive as a whole kind of reproduction. So the hive splits in half, the old half leaves with half the bees, and goes to hang on a tree about 100 yards from wherever their hive is, and they wait until they send out scouts until they find a new home to go live in. And then, so when you see it at this time of year, really if you see another group like this in the next month and a half, it's going to be from a beehive in a tree or one of a local beekeeper's hives.
Yeah.
Why it's not likely to be my hive is that it's big, so the original queen is probably with it. Swarms that are called secondary swarms are much smaller, and they have a queen with them who's a virgin queen, and when they get there, she has to still go out and get mated before they can live as a hive. But this one's a pretty big swarm. So now look how much calmer they are, and they're all sure that that's where they want to be. So in a minute, I'm going to take them. The hard part is the ones that are left end up, sometimes they'll go back to the tree where they were hanging. You can just pat the swarm while it's hanging there. They're not going to sting you. Now see, it's getting so much calmer. In just a second, I'm going to call it a day and shut the top. And what that'll mean is these ones that are not in the box are not necessarily going to go home with me, which is not a good thing. So what I am going to do is I'm going to push this more toward shutting it, and I'm going to stop the camera. Here we are. I've just gotten this swarm. It's probably a swarm from my bees. The swarm was literally right across the street from my house. My next door neighbor watched them as a tornadic cloud came through his yard, which he thought was very exciting. And they landed high in a tree at first, and then they ended up low. It didn't need a ladder, didn't need anything. So now we're going to put them in the hive box I have prepared. It's not great that I'm bringing them back to their own yard. I don't want to take them to the community garden where they left before because I didn't put in a queen excluder. So this time I have a queen excluder, and I'm going to just put these 4 frames of bees. They've gathered on the 4 frames that I gave them in the hive. I'm going to put them straight into this hive box. And hope they stay and are happy. It's kind of nice to transport them on frames like this because it makes it, you don't have to shake them into the hive. I'm going to have to shake a few of them, but I'm not going to have to shake a lot of them into the hive. This last one's going to be a little harder. Oops, I shake the one on the top of the box into the hive, although I just shook some of them onto the sheet. This was a mistake. I put it so close to the edge that I can't get in and get it. Put it into the box. Now we need to move those frames closer together. So I'm going to do that first. Move it closer. And move this one closer. And move this one closer, and then put this empty frame in. And then we're going to put the next box on. And take out a few frames so that what's left in the box where I need them to go, which is into the hive. So now we're going to fill the space that's open in this box. And this hive has a queen excluder on it, which is going to keep the queen from being able to leave for 24 hours and might mean that this hive stays in this new hive box. So I'm going to do very gently push this over and leave that there, and we'll see if some of them come into that part of the hive before we close it up. Now see this bee with her butt in the air? She's sending out the Nasanov signal saying mama's in here, so is that one, so is that one. So they're all signaling to tell these girls that are flying that if you want to get with mama, come here. And what I've done with putting the queen excluder on is I've made it so that the queen will at least stay overnight. It makes it so the drones can't leave. So I can't leave this on more than 24 hours. But tomorrow I'll come out and remove it. See, it's in here, and so these bees are orienting to this hive and are moving in. I should probably give them a third box. It's a pretty big swarm. So I'm going to go get another box. I like this top better because it's a telescoping cover. So I'm going to put it on instead. I'm going to give them a few minutes though because they look like they're settling in just great. It's amazing to see how many of them are signaling, come here, this is where you need to go. If this is a swarm from my own beehive, even though it was a big swarm, it may be a virgin swarm. We had huge queen cells in that one hive, and I'm not sure what they did with that, but they're bound to have opened while I've been gone. I've been gone for about 4 days. And this could be a swarm from somewhere else. Who knows where they came from? Don't you wonder what they're doing here? Are these like dumb bees who can't figure out where up is, and so they go up and run into the wood? Or are they just stymied because the whole thing smells like bee and they are glad to be here? I don't know. So what I have on this hive right now is what's called a migratory cover. I don't like it as well as a telescoping cover. I bought it because I won some bees from Bill Owens in an auction, and he required when you pick up the bees that you bring a 10-frame deep box and a telescoping cover, so I did. But I never have had much use for the telescoping cover. I like having an inner cover because of all the different things you can do with it. You can put a feeder over an inner cover. You can use an inner cover to put swarm lure on when you're trying to catch a swarm with your hive as a lure hive. You can have a moment as you're opening up the hive. You're not just ripping the top off the whole little community. You're just ripping off the inner covers opening. So there are a lot of advantages to the inner cover and the telescoping cover from my point of view, but a lot of people just love the telescoping cover, and the commercial beekeepers certainly do, because it doesn't have an edge on this side. It doesn't fold over and make for a hard time stacking hives together. They can stack hives on pallets and have the hives touch each other, and it makes for a more secure travel in a truck. This is really just so cool. I just drove back from the mountains, and here this swarm was in the yard across the street. And the guy across the street called me as I was driving home. And I'd had all this discussion with myself about whether to come home today or stay another couple days. And I decided to go ahead and come home today. And so I'm halfway home, and I get a call from my next door neighbor saying the hugest bee swarm just was in my backyard and is now across the street. And I thought I meant to go home. I should go home today. Okay, so now at this point I'm going to take off this migratory cover, and I'm going to put another box and all the stuff that goes with it on top of this hive. I'm going to go very slowly. There are not a lot of drones that come with a swarm, but here's a drone who came with this swarm. This is called the bulldozer method. Here's another drone that came with this swarm. The bulldozer method means you go very slowly forward so that the bees can get out of the way, and you don't squash bees as you go forward, and when you get to the edge you just push them off. So occasionally there'll be one that sticks its head up and gets squashed, but mostly it's a safer way. Now this gives these bees, which is a pretty large swarm, plenty of room, and I don't have to deal with this telescoping cover. But in a few minutes they'll all be in this striped hive we now have, green and white and green. Down here, let me see if you can see it. Yes, this is the queen excluder that's sticking out. Tomorrow I will come and take it off so that they'll be okay and they can get in and out of the hive, including the drones. Right now the drones can't. How cool is that, though? To come, what a welcome home present, right? Come home from out of town and there's a swarm.